All right, welcome to the first Notary Governance call of 2023. On this week's template here, we have a very light agenda. The reason for the light agenda is we're going to save a lot of our updates for like what's going to happen in the new year and what are we working on and what are some of the metrics until the next call. And we're planning to dedicate this call into these four categories. First, friendly hellos from the governance team. Make sure everyone on the call gets credit for their SLA. Next, I'm going to invest a few minutes checking in with all of the onboarded notaries, kind of let you know what's coming down the pipe, what you should have seen happen over the last week or two, and then what are next steps looking like for you. Then we have a brief time slot for the enterprise working group and the trust and transparency working group. And we have a lot of time left on the call for discussion. So a lot of the chat that's been going on in the public repo, this is a good place to kind of dive into that. And Galen will help lead that as we go forward. So with that, if you're ever curious about how to get an item onto the agenda, this is your first time coming to one of these calls, we post in the repository for Notary Governance a repo for essentially an issue for each Notary Governance call. I try to get these out about 2 weeks in advance. And there you can go in and make a comment like, hey, Kevin, I'd like to add a note about this proposal XYZ. Or I've noticed this in the network and I'd like 5 minutes to speak to it on this. The reason we do it like this is to kind of keep the syncs time boxed. And so we always know what's going to be coming and we can kind of allocate for it. So just as a friendly reminder, if you would like to have a dedicated topic added to this agenda, please feel free to make the comment. In 2023, we are going to be sunsetting a lot of the LDN application presentations on the call. The reason for this is in 2022, we started strong. A lot of them would show up. Towards the end of the year, what it came down to was they would create a video, not be on the call, so we would allocate the time for it. So now if there is an LDN applicant who wishes to share their content, I'll still encourage them to make a video. I'll still take point to make sure that that video of their application is disseminated to the Notary channel as well as LDN application review. But again, we will not be allocating time for applicants to present their application. We'll just take that async. The governance calls, these happen about on average every 2 weeks. I will post this into Slack pretty much the day before or right before, letting you know, hey, the call is about to start as a friendly reminder. One of the easiest things you can do to make sure that this shows up is there is a link to a Google Calendar where my mouse is. If you follow this calendar, it will then populate and show up on your phone, your computer, however you manage your schedule. And then at a quick at a glance, these are the next dates that are coming down the pipeline for 2023. We tried to be considerate of holidays and make sure that we adjusted. But if you do notice something that I might have missed for a big national holiday that would impact, please let me know. We can obviously make a proposal and modify these very simply as we go forward. But again, this call takes place at 8 Pacific, 1600 UTC. And then again, there's a second call, which takes place at 1800 Pacific, 02 UTC. And these came down from proposals last year. So let's do a friendly introduction on who the governance team is if you need help as you're working through the notary process. So obviously, since I'm talking, I'll start with myself. My name's Kevin. I've been with the foundation for around 1.5 years. Prior to that, I was at Protocol Labs. My role is to make sure that the notaries themselves are functioning effectively and efficiently. So I handle things like comms, this call, triaging issues between some of our tooling, between some of the developers that work on it, and just general catch-all. If you're looking for a POC and you don't know who to find, you could always use me, and I'll at least route you to the best point of contact that will be able to help your issue. To the right of my name on the screen is Kevin Z. It is a hiring requirement that one of us is Kevin on the team. So Kevin Z works for Protocol Labs. His role is the lead for the working group Enterprise Fil Plus. And if you haven't seen the Enterprise Fil program, just as a quick overview, this is onboarding large private data sets effectively for the network. So he leads this working group. They're always looking for new members, and we have a slide on this coming. And then also RG. RG also works for Protocol Labs, and his role is to lead the working group and the teams associated with trust and transparency. How is the network growing effectively? How are we rolling out tools to monitor that and track and make sure that folks are doing what they say they're doing and giving community members a voice to kind of flag and bubble up? So I'm sure he'll have a lot to say on today's call as well. Phil Protocol Labs, he's working on notary tooling. So a small example is the notary leaderboard that we'll be launching in the quarter. Things like that to make the tooling more effective for you notaries. So you're spending less time searching and clicking and more time reviewing and authorizing. Simon's looking specifically at the client onboarding process, also with Protocol Labs. And this is broad. So the new DataCap application website that we recently rolled out, taking this out of the registry, this was all Simon. And so again, if you have questions on the tooling, the website, Simon's a great POC to work with. Deep is working on the DataCap flow, as well as like overall how the program's going. So are we expanding the network? Are we contracting? Are there areas where we should be looking at by regions? Deep's taking a holistic approach to that and trying to make sure that we're growing in an effective way. And then Galen is responsible now for the overall governance of the Fil Plus program. So anything that might be a question, we're going to roll that up through Galen. So you might see Galen in a lot more of these discussions and a lot more issues and a lot more of the proposals, kind of weighing in on like smart strategic growth for the program. And Galen will be running that overall governance. So again, the reason we share this is if you want to tag any of us in Slack, these will be the subject domains where we can probably help you the best. If you tag one of us for a conversation that might not be relevant, we'll try to tag each other in. But the most successful way is if you don't know who to tag, feel free to hit me and I'll help you out as we go through it. All right, so I'm going to jump right in to notaries. Hello, notaries on the call. This week, we have a brand new Notary SLA form. I'm going to post it here in chat for you to come through it. Let me just find that chat link here. Chat. There you go. So you'll see in chat, there is an updated Airtable form, and I'm going to walk through it here with you and kind of highlight some of the changes. So previously, we had a timestamp where you'd fill in the time that you're calling. So right now we're on the morning call. So you would just select, hey, I'm here in the morning and select today's date. If you're calling in from another country, today might be the 18th on the call. So just select the time frame relative to your zone. Then your attendee's name, you'll just enter your name right here. Ideally, this is going to link back. And then previously under organization, we had a fill in the blank. So I would say Filecoin Foundation. Now you can actually scroll through and find the notary organization that you're associated with and then select it from this dropdown. If you go through this dropdown and you see that your notary organization's not on this list, feel free to put other, and then in the very bottom of this doc is comments. Let me know if I should somehow overlook it. We also have sections for community members, data applicants, notary not on this list. For those of you that might be looking at peers or colleagues or anybody else that might want to apply in the notary 5th round of election, please encourage them to come to these calls and fill this form out, because we do look at this as someone who says, yeah, I'll be an SLA 5, I'm going to be participating in the network. Well, we always ask, did you come to anything prior to this application? And this is a really good way to say, yeah, I've come to 4 notary governance calls. I'm familiar with how this works. So when you fill this out, just select your organization. Next, you'll pick the SLA participation level that you've signed up for in your application. So if you said you're an SLA 1, just mark that. It's pretty self-explanatory. And below that, we've sent each of you a unique token code. Please put this token code in. This does a lot to help us monitor participation as well as link back any missing data. So if I was missing an applicant or didn't have your name or couldn't connect you, with this token code, I can now tie that back. So please, 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 in your application, make sure you've listed your token code, your region. Now, something new in this form, we're now asking you to self-report kind of your engagement. So the way this works is you might say, hey, I signed up to be an SLA level 2, which means you're going to be part of a working group. You're going to be like looking at a couple of proposals. You would now self-report how much time you've invested since the last governance call. So it could be, you know, this cycle, I didn't have a lot of time. I was out of the office. It was New Year's, real low for me, 2 hours. And then just kind of list what 2 hours you were doing. So like, yep, I was doing my notary onboarding and I was getting started with the Enterprise Fil Plus working group. You're going to fill this out every 2 weeks, and we're going to make this self-reporting. And what we're going to be doing, and we'll talk about this more on future calls and the tools that Phil is building, is we're building tooling that will pull participation from GitHub repos, from data applications, from comments in Slack. And what we're going to do is try to look at the two. And this isn't meant to be a gotcha. It's meant to be like, are we missing areas where you might be spending your time for helping the program? So this is meant to collect that so we don't just build a tool that steamrolls over it. So please list where you've been spending kind of your time, and we're going to build this into the leaderboard as we go through. If there's any problems in this form, you don't see your organization, there's something you wanted to bring to light, any comments you put in this form go straight to me. So it's only me that sees this. So you could put anything that you would put in a private chat. This isn't public, and then I can get to that. Some of the comments that would be most helpful is like, hey, K-Ray, I was out of the office, so you'll notice that my hours and participation are a little bit light. Looking forward to next week. Then I'll make that note as we're upgrading it into the leaderboard. So as a quick refresh, this new form is now posted right there in the chat. Go ahead and fill that out. I'm going to post the link one more time because I see we had a few more individuals join the call, but please fill that out for your Notary SLA participation. All right, next for notaries. Hello, hello, onboarding, 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 my goodness. So when we started this first round, I think there were 6 notaries, and in the second round, it went up to around 20. Third round, we went up to low 50s, and with this fourth, we've jumped. So we are well over 100 notaries, which individuals are multiple within a notary. So we're managing around 150 to 160 people as far as comms go. So right off the bat, I wanted to say thanks. I know a lot of you pinged me like, hey, I haven't been added to this group, or I've been missing this. So my apologies. Just imagine hiring and onboarding 160 new people with an organization on the same day. It's we're finally catching up. So you should see a lot more faster comms as we go through it. So here's what you could expect next. Right now, we are going through the disclosure forms that you submitted. Some of you might have got a DM from me in the last couple of days asking like, hey, can you verify your address, or I'm missing your full legal name? And what legal is doing is verifying that name, that organization against sanction lists, against wallet addresses, to make sure that you are who you say you are, or that we're allowed to do business with you is an effective way to kind of put that. Completed as of last night is all notaries should have now been added to their regional private notary channel, as well as the general private notary channel. You would have also seen me add you to a private DM with Phil and myself, and we'll talk about that more on the call on how to use that. Coming up next, we are going to be sending onboarding guides to you, probably in the next couple of days as we polish these up a little bit. And that'll explain more about the day-to-day. How do you sign into the registry? How do you review an application? How do you discuss that application? How do you sign that application? And how do you move forward? So coming for next for you is a call out that the ledger address in your notary application should be updated. So if you filled out one ledger address in your application, then you received a new address, make sure that your GitHub application is current and updated. If not, when the bot goes to sign, it won't recognize you. If you have any questions, I'm sure many of you have, and we've been talking in DMs, feel free to send me a DM and I can help verify that for you. The next action that you'll take is when you receive the notary onboarding docs, they'll come in the private notary channel, is take a look, ask any questions. We'll try to facilitate those questions in the public forum as much as possible to make sure that anybody else can benefit from your questions. And then you'll be verifying your address on the multi-sig in the registry. And then you can ask these questions and you're off to the races. We essentially now are allocating you data cap and letting you go review and sign these applications. So I'll pause here. And the only caveat is the reason you don't see dates on this one is as this goes through, we'll be putting the dates. Galen, I see that you have a hand up, so I'll pause and give you first question, my friend.
Yes, not a question, just another call out comment. One of the things that still needs to take place in part of the ratification, there's a lot of tooling that we use and a lot of GitHub repos that we use. And specifically for some of them, like the direct allocations and the large data set, each notary GitHub account will get invited as a collaborator to those repos, and you have to accept that invite in order for some of those tools to work successfully. So stay on top of your email, stay on top of your GitHub notifications, because you should see an invite to be like a collaborator. So that's like one of the steps that slowed some people down last year and led to some problems where they would try and get they wouldn't get notified of an allocation request, or bots wouldn't work. We're also in the process of figuring out some of the back-end tooling. Right now, we have this one V3 multisig that has, X number of signers on it and has received, just recently received 119 PIBs of data cap, which is like kind of mind-boggling amount of data cap for that notary, that V3 notary. But what we're trying to figure out is, does it make more sense for us to add all of the new notaries to that existing address, or deprecate that address and create a new one? There's pros and cons to either decision. There's hurdles with Lotus. We've kind of bandied back and forth this idea of trying to get a FIP. I can't see it making the next network upgrade, but basically a FIP that would let us do more bulk actions. Right now, adding a signer to a multi-sig, you can only add one signer at a time. So that means that if we needed to add 60 new signers to a multi-sig, that's 60 manual proposals with 60 manual approvals. So it's just, a lot of like ratification maintenance. As K-Ray said, it's like onboarding a bunch of new employees, and it's not as simple as saying, okay, great, well, here's your Okta account, go forth and conquer. You've been added to everything. There's just a lot of disparate tools that we got to put people on. So thank you for bearing with us on that, patience. Hopefully people get added correctly to the different Slack channels. And then as you notice issues, let us know, and we'll keep on top of the timeline to the best of our ability.
Yeah, thanks for that, Galen. I appreciate that. I'll pause and see if anybody else has any questions. You can post them in chat or raise a hand and get back to you. All right, seeing no questions. Oh, I do see a question. Yeah, the floor is yours.
Hi, Gavin. I'm Jeffrey from Biotech, and we are the level 5 notary around, and we still cannot find our name on the Filecoin Plus dashboard. And does that mean we haven't onboarding yet? Also, should we keep waiting the final result?
Let me take a look into that. You're talking about the main list in the repo of all notaries?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll take point. Great flag. Let me know. And I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of those crickets that got left in the old house. So I'll take a scan on that. Thanks for flagging. I'll run that down for you.
All right, cool.
Thanks. And then Young from Store Swift, I see your hand. Floor is yours.
Yeah, hello. So I have one question. So when will you send the onboarding docs in the private channel?
Probably in the coming days. So right now, we're still dealing with a lot of the disclosures and the verification. So as Galen mentioned, there's a lot of like back end that needs to be corrected before we're good to go. So what I don't want to do is give you all the docs and say, hey, go forth, but nothing is ready for you. So if today is Tuesday, I think a safe date to look for that is either Friday or Monday at the latest of next week. And then you'll have all that to start getting started, because we'll have the tooling ready for you.
Okay, because we will take days off because the Spring Festival is coming in China. So, okay.
Yes, that's a great flag. We'll talk about this later on the schedule, but just to kind of answer your point, very well aware that we have a big holiday coming up for most of you. So everything with the onboarding is self-paced, which means you could get it Friday and Monday of next week, and then take your time as you're out of the office and spending time with loved ones and whenever you're back. So nothing will be time sensitive. The only time sensitive things we've completed, which was disclosures and getting everybody set with that. Now that that's behind us, everything will be at your own pace. So great flag. Thanks for asking.
Okay, cool.
So I mentioned that Phil's working on notary tooling. One of the things that Phil's about to roll out in this quarter is an updated version of what we call the notary leaderboard. So at the root for Fil Plus, this program is essentially community and interested parties doing the diligence of verifying these data, not having one centralized point of contact in the organization. So as we talk about discussions that are taking place, one of the things you'll see rolled out coming is this leaderboard, which we've been looking forward to for a while. And what this leaderboard will essentially do is just like a score sheet in a video game, it'll take some of the key attributes of the work that you're doing as notaries and then list that out in a scoreboard type format where you can see who is the top notary for assigning data cap within an accurately and safe way within a very effective speed, who's unique clients, the issues that they're handling, the proposals that they're discussing, and their participation. We are going to use this notary leaderboard in our SLA metrics. We're going to use this going forward in future elections. So this is just a soft plug for some of the reasons why we're asking for like SLA call participation, because we're going to start automating that and building that into the leaderboard. And we'll talk about this as it gets closer to launch, and we'll show you what fields are going to be looking at it. So again, right now, you're self-reporting that, and we're going to take that and compare it to what data we're pulling. But in the next couple of months and weeks, we'll have this leaderboard up so you can see exactly what's being signed, who's signing it, and then how they're doing that in the program. So look for this coming in the coming weeks. The next point for the onboarding is the disclosure form. So this is a very important thing. And essentially what the disclosure form is we at the foundation take this back with our legal officers and we look at which organization and which ledger ID is requesting to receive data cap. And we send one fill to each new notary. And that fill is meant to cover the cost of gas as you work on the program. And so in order for us to send that financial instrument, we have to have a very clear line of reporting, essentially a very complex due diligence of KYB. So some of you might have got a DM from me like, hey, we're missing your organization name, or it's just one first name like Kevin. So thank you for getting that back to me. Any of the disclosure forms that were not completed will miss this round. So I sent pings to some of you that may or may not be on the call, like, hey, I never got your disclosure form, therefore we never submitted this for you. So I'll be circling back with those notaries that may have been selected in this round but never completed their disclosure form to kind of update on like what options are available for them. But no news is good news. So if you've completed this form and you've submitted it, it all automatically goes into our metrics for reporting, and that's being sent. And you'll see that one fill come through your wallet probably in the next couple of days before the end of the week as we slowly work through these 100 notary addresses. But again, that one fill is meant to cover the gas fees as you're involved in the program. So no action needed unless I've reached out to you. And then the last thing for the onboarding is we will be signing you into the registry. Galen mentioned the tooling on this. A lot goes into the back end. So you may see that you're going to receive information on how to actually navigate to the registry, set up your wallet address and confirm and start signing applications. I'll be sending you a very detailed guide on troubleshooting that. You new notaries, you've not been added to the back end, so these guides won't let you in until we've authorized your ledger address after the disclosure completes. But this will essentially allow you to view the applications, and we'll talk quite a bit about this in the async documentation. The last point I'd like to leave on for notaries is Slack channels. So we're going to see that a lot of the communications with the program happens in Slack. So having effective Slack communications means that we can communicate a lot more effectively as we go through this program together. So the first one that I'd call out that everyone should be in is the Fil Plus. This is used for general announcements, generalized chatter, sharing things with the broad group. It has 2,165 members as of when I made this slide deck. So this is really good if you want to get a message out to essentially everybody who may have eyes on in the Fil Plus program. Sometimes that can be an effective way. Sometimes that might be a way that we increase the chatter on a thread. So as we talk about this in discussions, just be mindful that as we're posting in that room, it's going to have 2,100 eyes on it. The other channel that all notaries are encouraged, so I didn't manually add you, it's just recommended, is Fil Plus application review. This is a channel that was stood up, so if a data applicant wants to flag their application or answer any questions, or they're looking for a notary to get involved, they come to this channel and they try to drum up or answer anything because sometimes GitHub can be siloed, and unless you've been specifically tagged, it's hard to find. So it's recommended that notaries join this channel. It's a great way to keep eyes on and stay active in it. Report a Scam with 79 members is something that I don't think we have a lot of participation right now. So I'm gonna highlight this. If you see something on the network, this is a really effective channel to come to kind of share it. Like, hey, I'm seeing this take place, and it's separate from the working group, and it's a way that you can kind of flag this. It's not just specific for the Fil Plus program, so we may look at migrating this over to the Trust and Transparency Working Group if we see a lot of traction. But if you did see something and you want to avoid, like, hey, I don't want to start this off with like a 2,100 people commenting, Report a Scam is a great way to kind of like kick that off if you're not in the Trust and Transparency Working Groups. The Fil Plus Notaries channel is private. It's only open to verified notaries. Right now, there's around 168 of us in this channel. And this is a really good channel for voicing very specific questions to the program that you only want to share with notaries. So rather than being 2,100 people, it's only 168, which means that the threads might not fork, might not go through. And this is a good way for you to kind of like raise any questions, raise any issues just for notaries. A real effective way is if you have a question versus DMing me, if you have that question, typically others do as well. So that private notary channel is a great way to kind of flag that. Then there's also a regional channel for each one of you notaries. These aren't highly used. Back when data applications were specific to regions, these were much more effective for like, hey, we're looking for someone to sign as the LDN model. These have become less used. But if you're looking for an even smaller group, maybe a cohort by your region, these notary channels are set up for you, and a great way to just kind of ask a question, smaller group, without having to ping the whole notaries or the whole Fil Plus community. And then again, the other option for you is a private thread. So each notary group, what I did was I made a private channel with everybody in your organization, myself and Phil. The goal of this is sometimes in an organization, there might be 2, 3, sometimes 5 or 6 members. And if I get a DM from somebody, I don't know if they represent your organization, or it could fork the threads. So I politely requested, if you do want to DM, the safest and most effective way is to use those private channels I've stood up. There's like 160 of them. They're unique for each notary group. And when you message me, it's only private, but that prevents forks as we go through on that. So all these channels will be shared in this doc. You should all be added to them except for the application review self-add because it's not required. And I'm going to pause and see if anybody has any questions on like the Slacks, the channels, or anything they might want to add.
Wait, can I talk? Sorry, I didn't raise my hand.
It's quite okay. Go ahead.
All right. So I had a question about the regional groups. I was added to the North American group, but then I saw that it seems like there are specific working group meetings for those. Is there any way I can find maybe the schedule for that so I can join when necessary?
If I'm understanding your question correctly, you were added to the North America regional group for notaries, and you're asking if there's a working group. So short answer, please correct me if I'm wrong in chat, anybody, but there are no regional working groups.
Okay.
The 2 working groups we have currently are for Trust and Transparency and the Enterprise Fil Plus, but no regional working groups. Now, if you wanted to stand one up with the members of your region, get together, talk, review, co-work, completely encouraged. I can help you set that up however you need, but it's not specifically managed by the governance team to support.
All right. No problem. Because I saw James put something like meeting notes. I was wondering what that was about when I got added, but I'll follow up.
Yeah, I'll take a look too after this call. Thanks for flagging.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to the working groups. And before I hand it over, Kevin Z, if you're on the call, I'll be queuing you up next. There are 2 Slack channels for these working groups. We shared these on past calls. I didn't want to dedicate too much time. I want to save it for discussion. But if you are an SLA level 2 or above, you will be joining a working group. So be sure to get a jump on that. Kevin's going to have a proposal open that he'll talk about how to join and go through, and same with the trust and transparency. But here's the comms chatter for those 2 working groups. You could align whichever one best fits your spikes as we go forward on that one. So with that, KZ, are you on the call? Are you here to speak to this proposal?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, Kevin. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'll just give a quick update today. So we started the E-Fil Plus pilot in November of last year. The enterprise working group is obviously has a much broader focus, but we are focused right now on supporting private encrypted data clients to have stronger applications. And we're also taking this opportunity to test other pieces of the application process, such as notary approvals and lead SPs. So right now, we've had some participation as of last year, and we want to iterate on what we've learned so far and continue moving forward. And what I proposed in the discussion that's listed here, and I can post the link, is we just want to update the notary approval process to have more accountability towards notaries actually leaving comments on the applications they're reviewing related to specific topics, and also setting a time frame for them to review. So when we initially created this group, there was only a handful of notaries that signed up, and because it does require some extra time and effort, and we do appreciate the,
I believe you're muted, PJ.
KZ, you went on mute.
Sorry. I want to open up this group and the E-Fil Plus multi-sig to all active notaries. So if you are interested, please review the expectations for the E-Fil Plus notary working group. And if interested, please comment on this discussion topic. I'm happy to talk about this more. We have working group calls the same day as this call, but every other Tuesday. So next Tuesday, I'll have a call. You're welcome to join or watch the recording, and we can talk in more detail there. But that's sort of the high-level overview of where we are. And we talk on new things there every other week. The Slack channel is also the best place to probably follow along as well. So with that, I'll stop for now and leave it there, Kev. Thank you.
Great. I'm going to pause for a minute if anybody has any questions for KZ on the line, either about the working group proposal or getting involved. This is the time to do it. Awesome. All right, Archie, I'm going to hand the floor over to you for the Trust and Transparency Working Group, and everyone on the call. After Archie, we'll get into the discussions, and we'll have Galen lead that. So Archie with Trust and Transparency.
Thanks, Kevin. So I just wanted to start off with a few housekeeping items. So the working group calls will be starting again bi-weekly, beginning next week. They follow right after KZ's calls on the E-Fil Plus. So the invites are shared ahead of time on the Trust and Transparency Working Group channel, but I'm happy to share them again. So you can just DM me. I'll share them today after our call in the Trust and Transparency Working Group. I'm also hosting TNT office hours today because we weren't able to host the working group call today. So the link for that, I'll just drop it in the chat right here. And yeah, so the longer discussion about some of the trust and transparency issues, I don't think we'll have all the time today to get to them. So please come to the office hours and then we can talk to them at length. And finally, based on, I'll give a synopsis of everything that has happened over the past couple of weeks. So a lot of these issues aren't new to me or the governance team. I think we're aware that there is potential abuse of data cap, which is why my job exists, and which is why we're working. We stood up this trust and transparency working group. We have been building tools and programs Now, I think the urgency for some of these things have been brimmed up by different community members, for which I personally am super thankful for. And so what that led to is an investigation into all the LDNs. As Gillen mentioned earlier in this call, an upwards of 190 PIBs of data cap was kind of used up in the past 2 months. And so that being a signal for an unusual behavior, not necessarily a signal for abuse, we wanted to investigate that. And I think the outcome of that today is that this is the first time we are proposing removal of notaries from the Filecoin Plus program. Again, this is a proposal coming out of an investigation from the Trust and Transparency Working Group, based on a lot of evidence that I've received in confidentiality, as well as evidence that has been shared in public, both on the Trust and Transparency Working Group channel, as well as the E-Fil Plus channel. So yes, I can post the link to issue 811 on Notary Governance. The issue was posted on the Trust and Transparency Working Group channel as well. So the goal here, again, this is, our network is a decentralized network. So this is a proposal. In the next couple of days, I'm expecting and hoping that different community members, as well as notaries who are in question, can have a productive discussion on this issue. I encourage everyone to not kind of just do finger pointing and support your arguments with hard evidence. On 12 noon on Friday, which is the 20th, let me just confirm the date here. This coming Friday at 12 noon PST, we'll look at the results of the discussion, and then accordingly on Jan 20th, and recommend the root key holders take action based on community consensus. So the community consensus might be that these notaries are good to stay, or the community consensus might be that yes, there is potential abuse, and so we do need to take some action. So that's the immediate result of some of the discussions that have happened. We have community members share other things in different channels that I'm taking my time to review. So I wouldn't be commenting on them today, but I think in the next couple of weeks, we will reshare some of our roadmaps of what we're building. I still think the approach here is not to kind of shoot down, just like bad actors, and then we'll just get over it. I don't think that's going to be a good sustainable approach. I think we do need to build longer term systems. I think the urgency has been shown that we do need to kind of also address immediate concerns. So I think the way I've seen the conversation evolve is threefold. One is there's an ask from the community to do more stringent KYC on the top of the funnel. E-Fil Plus is an experiment to do that. There's a bunch of challenges, as you would imagine, to do KYC. So there's client KYC and data KYC. The E-Fil Plus program doesn't necessarily want to rely on, for the lack of a better word, Web 2 KYC. If we end up relying on existing systems to do KYC for a new system that we're building, I think it doesn't always help us in the right manner. And so that is not to say that we won't. We're still experimenting what that balance would look like. The second ask from the community has been coming up with stringent consequences for abuse. So now that might mean, from a client perspective, removal of data cap; from an SP perspective, removing QAP; from a seal sector, which has its own technical complexities. And the third ask that has come through is pushing out more comms about what the rules are, what are good behaviors to notaries, to clients, to SPs. I personally make a point to post an update every once in a while and do so in the Trust and Transparency Working Group, but I've heard concerns, and I will be more proactive, and I'll ask other members of the governance team as well to be more proactive in pushing out and brimming up and reminding the community what the rules are of the Filecoin Plus program. There was a doc shared earlier today in the Filecoin Plus and the Fil Plus channel, as well as the Trust Working Group channel by a community member. I responded to some of the things that we're doing on the retrieval front, on the accountability front. Again, these are things. There's a works in progress since I joined in July, and also I think but the work has been going on before as well. As you can imagine, there's been close to like a 5,500% growth since last year, exactly this time, and so that means a lot of things. I think in many ways, I think we are always playing catch up with growth. We're playing catch up with how the program is evolving, and so all of that being said, we've heard all the concerns. We're consolidating them, and we are taking action on some of these things. The first and immediate action being removal, or the proposal to remove notaries. At this point, I'll stop talking and I'll open the floor to comments and discussions.
RG, it looks like the first hand we have up is from Irma, and then we'll go down the line.
Okay.
Hello, RG. And hi guys, I'm Irma from ND Labs, and also RG, appreciate for your hard work and for this discussion. And we are still checking our sign history, and for those LDN, for all of our history sign. And we are both on the all on the rules, and for the which is about IP situation. For example, the non-trace like us, I signed for this LDN, but I can't check the IP situation. The IP situation is far away from my ability to track. So also for this, and I think I was totally disagree with that. I was abused. I was fraud.
Yeah, thanks. I don't have any specific comments on that. I think we can talk at this length in the office hours, but I think let's have a broader discussion and on the issue itself.
Yeah.
As well as,
what do you think? Also for the community member, what do you think? Result for the is too technical for the non-trace like us, like me. I'm a product line. But I'm not a technical or engineers. So this situation is far away for us. Why don't we create?
I think one of the things I think, and this has been brought up before, there's actually an active discussion topic on this on the Notary Governance repo. This was brought up right around, I think, last year in August or September. A lot of the notaries, when they apply, they have a very detailed plan of doing due diligence, and I think I think I'm not necessarily referring to ND Labs situation here. I'm just talking broadly. I think what we are finding is that a lot of the times there's a discrepancy in that plan that has been shared, because as you know, I think when we release the results, there's a lot of people who apply to become notaries. There's people we have to say no. And so I think the technical ability isn't, I think it can be, I don't think it should be a blocker. I think if notaries broadly want more additional support, for example, for LDNs, you already have, 4 different notaries having to sign for allocations. You're more than welcome to request, support from other notaries before you're completely confident. I think, again, this is, I don't want to use this forum to make any conclusions or decisions, but I think this is probably a longer conversation that we can have. But just broadly speaking, for notaries, if you think that technical abilities is going to be a blocker, I think that should be consideration for both in the application process as well as signing process. because data cap is not a resource that we can just give out,
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a long-term discussion, and it's also a long-term for the Fill Plus community. Also, for these days, the chatbot is a great work for the community to expand.
Hey, Irma, I'm going to step in just for the interest of time. Great points. I'm going to turn it over right now. I know that we have a lot of folks on the line that were here for this discussion. Galen, this might feel like the right time. I'll come to the next slide and let you introduce yourself, and then we'll turn it over for like high-level discussions on this point.
Yeah, thank you. So as RG mentioned, there's a lot of things happening in the trust and transparency front. There are some office hours, there's some various conversations. I think that, one of the things that he said was around like the percentage of growth. In the past year, the overall daily active deals have grown 1,000%. The Filecoin Plus deals have grown 5,000%. The percent increase from just the past 360 days. That is just a huge increase in scale. Has our staff grown 5,000%? Has our budget? Has our headcount? Have the number of tools? Has our tech stack? Have the number of notaries? No. I think these things have not grown at a pace to keep up with that scale of increased traffic. And all of us are trying to grow the traffic on the network at every level of this marketplace, right? Because that is part of what we're hoping to accomplish, right? Is make this network sustainable, profitable for everyone involved, while remaining resilient and robust. Okay, so if all of us want it to be successful, different people are balancing different variables and priorities. There's different things in front of them. In different regions, there are different geopolitical or market factors that are going to lead to storage providers, clients, or service providers making different variable prioritizations. So where we are right now is not really significantly different of the types of conversations that we're having. A year ago, we were having conversations around how do we know that the traffic that we have, that the data that we have is good or valid? How do we define good and valid data? Should we support encrypted data? How will we ever check encrypted data to know that it is not spam? So these conversations are not new, and I appreciate that the community is still having them. And I want to highlight that we are having these increased conversations because of increased tooling, because there are more people in the network, because we are trying to push ourselves to be better. So, around 8 months ago at Phil Austin, we were having a lot of conversations very similar to this in some, different working sessions. As far as what does it mean that we now have tools like the CID tracker and we are able to point to what we consider abuse? I think that it is important to know that the CID tracker itself is not indicative of flagrant abuse. It is just indicative of replicas. Maybe that means there are too many replicas of a certain type of thing across some cohort of storage provider IDs. And maybe that is not best behavior, but it does not intrinsically mean that that is therefore fraud or abuse. It could just be that we're storing 100 copies of something when we should be storing 5 copies of more things. So the network is still growing, our tooling is still growing. I think what's important here is that everybody that's on this call should have aligned interests in trying to make this network sustainable, scalable, and profitable. And if we are all continuing to agree to try and work at this together in a more collaborative, decentralized way, rather than trying to throw someone else under the bus or trying to, shoot holes in somebody else's argument. I don't have all the answers because I don't see all of the variables. I don't work in these different geopolitical regions where some of you do. I don't have subject matter expertise that some of you do. Some of you have a lot more experience on actually sealing deals as a storage provider. And some of you have a lot more experience on philosophically, like, how do we handle Sybil attacks and trust and transparency? So let's try and have a little bit more grace for everybody in this community that is showing up with their own opinions. With that, I know that there have been a lot of conversations just in the past like week around, you know, are certain LDN applications valid? Should we nix certain LDNs? Should we revoke data cap? As it stands, there is not a technical way to modify the QAP of sealed sectors. I think people are drafting that fit. Great. Submit it to the community, work on it, figure out how it's going to work. Is that going to be a fix all? No. How are we going to prove that the SP new? That's going to be tricky. I think that that FIP is going to need to solve both the technical side of it, how do you slash it, what happens, but also the social side of it. What happens if an SP was, you know, shown, well, here's a client, they claim to have this notary signed off on it. They didn't know necessarily what they were signing, what they were agreeing to. How do we define the social parameters that say this is when we can and should modify sealed sectors? And I think there's also going to be an ongoing question of, is that in the overall network's best interest, given where we are in committed capacity with where we are in actual sealed deals, and trying to bridge that gap for us to start axing sealed deals versus other possible solutions to the problem. So those are all good questions. Winan has a hand. The chat is blowing up faster than I'm going to be able to read and keep up with it. I will attempt to moderate it. Stay civil. Winan.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I just put it in the chat channel also. I think when you do not know what you're signing on because you lack the technical skills, either you should call for help, and there were plenty of possibilities with it. They could contact you, they could contact me, they could ask in the Slack channels, they could ask on GitHub what's going on. There were plenty of warnings given. So yeah, when you don't know what you're doing, you should not sign. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, so this is an argument for, like, should a notary sign an allocation to award data cap when they maybe have not done all of the technical diligence? And I think that there will always be a pressure to bias towards giving somebody a chance, that a notary will bias towards giving a client a chance, that an SP will bias towards giving that client a chance and taking that deal, and saying, you have told me one thing up front, you know, qualitatively, and then you behaved in a certain way quantitatively. And so I think that as a notary, there is always room to say, you know what, let's approve it and see if they do what they say they're going to do and go further. And we can learn from approving more things and then investigating quantitative results to build better tooling. If we are necessarily across the board extremely stringent in our data cap allocation approvals, it becomes harder to grow the program and build the tools that we need, right? We don't have as many examples where a notary made a mistake or where a client behaved in a way that was counter to what they said they were going to do. So I think there's always sort of this balancing act between qualitatively a client came and told us one thing, we took them at face value, we approved it, even if we didn't investigate it as fully as maybe we would have other times. And now quantitatively, what is the outcome? But I do think that that's where, like, there's an opportunity for us to say mistakes were made. How can we address retroactively, and what are we doing looking forward? Looking forward, we're having, you know, more definitions of what is bad behavior on a client side, what is bad behavior on a notary side, what is bad qualitative information up front, what is bad quantitative data once deal making has started. If we can agree on more of those standards across the board, it makes it easier to write better rules. I don't see any other hands, but there's like a lot of questions happening in the chat. K-Ray or RG, is there like a synthesis on a question that needs insight?
I have a question. For
I
data
think
cap
last question for you, CB. We have 1 minute left, so quick
okay.
question if we're going to get it.
So I was under the impression that is like you cannot distribute over a certain percent for a certain region, for each specific region, right? Is that a hard or soft rule?
So for LDNs, we have had a soft rule that we want data distribution of a certain percent, but it's not specifically by region. We want data distribution across SPs, and it is more important that a client is upfront about what they are going to do, again, qualitatively, because there are very valid use cases where client data is region restricted.
Yeah. So if I'm purely doing it with like 10 different unique SP in one single country and it's justifiable, that is acceptable, right?
If a client submits an LDN and says, this data cannot leave this region for these reasons, here's my justification, here's who I am, perform your diligence, here are the SPs that I'm going to work with, they're in this region, here's how I'm going to distribute the data, and the notaries come in and say, this is a real client, they really do represent this organization, this is real data, this is valid that it cannot leave that region, these are real SPs, we are going to approve it. Look, quantitatively, they said they were going to distribute to those SPs. They did that. Those SPs are in that region. That is all above the board.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Thanks, Galen.
So we're at the 1 hour time frame. Galen, thank you for that. RG, thank you. The comments from Wyden, Young, CB.
Hello.
What we're going to do is, if you have further questions on this, as far as like this particular topic that we're discussing now, which kind of falls into the trust and transparency umbrella, in the chat, I just posted the time frame. It's also in the public Fil Plus channel that RG shared. It's 1 hour from now. If you'd like to join, it's the Trust and Transparency Working Group. They're going to dive into this in a lot more detail. But 1 hour from now, if you wanted to join that call, the link is in the Fil Plus channel as well as in the chat. Wanted to thank everyone who came to the call. I think we have over 53 participants. Shows the size and scale. And just to let, as Galen was saying, this isn't the end of the conversation, just the start, and same with the proposals that RG is saying. So with that, we'll cap the call. Thank you for coming. There's another call that's going to kick off at 6 p.m. tonight Pacific and 0200 UTC. I'll stop the recording. If anybody has a question or wants to kind of flag that, the recording will stop in the interest of time, but I'll stay on the line for a few more moments if anybody has a logistical question. So with that, thank you for coming to the first Notary Governance call. We'll see you on the 31st for the next one, or the second call, which happens today at 1800 02 UTC. Cheers, everyone. All right. Well, good evening, good morning to all of you on the call. This is the second Notary Governance call of January 17th or 18th, depending on where you are in the world. Let's take a look. On the agenda, we have 4 main broad categories. This call mirrors the same format as the morning. So if you're here for the morning, you'll hear a lot of the same stuff, pending any changes in the discussion. And if you're watching this recording, same basic premise. We'll start out with just a brief intro of who the Notary Governance team is. We'll give the notaries a chance to sign their SLAs to populate the leaderboard. We're going to move into topic number 2, which is just updates on the notary onboarding, how the Slack comms are coming, how the disclosure forms look, and any actions we needed, and then a brief introduction to the registry that you'll be receiving. Then we'll move on to updates from the Enterprise Plus and Trust and Transparency working groups with updates on their participation, as well as a new proposal that was issued. Then at the end of the call, for the next 20 or so minutes, what we have available, we'll open it up for discussion, and Galen will lead this part just for kind of any community comments, a lot of back and forth in the Fil Plus channel. So this is a chance to connect as a team and a community and go over that. So that's a bad slide. I'll change that. So right off the bat, we have this meeting every 2 weeks. This is the 2023 schedule. We take place 2 times a day. This is in the Google shared calendar. So if you wanted to follow this meeting invite, feel free to grab that link. And if you're looking for this slide deck, we post this every meeting in the Fil Plus channel in the comment reminding that this call is taking place. So if you wanted to follow along, that's where you'd find this slide deck. And the dates listed are all the dates that we have this notary governance call every 2 weeks for all of 2023. So quick intro to who our governance team is. I'll start off with myself since I'm talking. My name's Kevin. I've been with the Filecoin Foundation for a little over a year. And my role on the team is to look at the notary process and make sure that you have a single point of contact for questions or issues, help you wherever you need, facilitate your onboarding, help with the elections and these governance calls. Next to me is Kevin Z. Kevin Z leads our work in the the Enterprise Fill Plus working group. And that Enterprise Fill Plus is looking at how we're bringing on very, very large private data sets and making sure that that's aiding to the mission of the Filecoin Plus program. And then also RG. RG is the working head for the Trust and Transparency working group. And this is looking at how are we stabilizing the process and making sure that it's equitable and fair and following the guidelines that we have in place. Phil is working on notary tooling. He's on leave right now. But things like the leaderboard that we're going to be talking about on this call falls under Phil. So he's really involved in that. And Simon, who's on the call right now, Simon's leading our work with the client onboarding and tooling. So if you've had a chance to take a look at the new data request website, that'll fall in some of the purviews that Simon's working on. Our friendly Deep, as always, is looking at the overall data cap flow. How do we make sure that this program is going forward and keeping that data coming in? And Galen has shifted into a role of overall governance. So Galen is looking at how is the overall program operating and maintaining growth as we continue to just scale. So if you need anything, please reach out to us. We all have kind of our subject area domains. If you're not sure who to contact, feel free to ping me and I can always route you to the right place. What we ask is just please don't tag everybody if you have an issue, because then usually what that does is it slows it down just a little bit while we go. So onto that notary section. We have an updated SLA kind of check-in form, and I'd like to walk you through it here in just a moment. But at a high level, what we had last year was an Airtable form where you would sign in and get your SLA participation. We use this to look at our notary applications for someone applying to be in the program. We looked at this for notaries that were participating already to see how active they were in proposals and coming to these meetings and voices their opinion. This form is no different. So it mirrors a lot of the same questions as we had as last year. I'll walk you through and show you, but I'm going to drop the link to this right now in chat. So if you're a notary in the program and you're kind of participating here, please fill out this form so we can give you your credit for being part of the program and coming. If you're a storage provider or a community member, we'd also encourage you to fill this out. We don't collect any information to like market you, but if you should apply in the future to become a notary, it is really valuable to come back and say, look, I've been in the program for the past 4 months coming to meetings. So this is your chance to do it with this sign up form. When you log into it, you'll see that right now there's 2 session drop down times. And then you pick the date specific to your time zone. So right now for me, it'd be the 17th. Just go ahead and put your name in the box. That way we know who's on the organization from your call. And then right now we have a drop down. So if you don't represent a notary organization, you'll see that there's community member, data applicant, other, or you could just pick your organization right here from this drop down and then select it. We're also asking that you identify your SLA participation that you've agreed to. And we're going to be tracking and collecting this as we start to build out the leaderboard as I talk about. And then listing your token code. For those of you that I've been talking to in Slack, this is important to make sure that we're getting the right information from the right individuals. So the token code serves as almost like a unique ID for all of your communications. So if we want to come back and find any of these records later, the token code is how we do it. Your region, your self-reported hours, and your program involvement. So go ahead and fill this out. Once we get these collected at the end of this call, I'll cap this form so no other entries can come through. So you have about 50 minutes and I'll post this link once more at the end of the call. So the next steps for you notaries that are coming on board is we're working through the onboarding process right now. So what I've done over the last couple of days is you've been added to private Slack channels, and I'll talk about that next. It sounds like I can't hear anything. I'm just going to pause for a minute and just take a quick look. Can I get a thumbs up, Alexandre or anybody else? Can you guys hear me okay, or is it my mic? I can hear okay. Okay. Feel free to interrupt. I'm here for you right now. So Right now, we are doing the following things. So right off the bat, you all got disclosure forms from us back in December. And this is the information that we need in order to send you one fill. And we're sending one fill to every notary in the program to cover the cost of gas fees as you work within it. We're also using this disclosure form for a sanctions check to make sure that you're authorized to do business and we can work with you. So all the information in that needed to be completed, reached out to all of you, and so that should be going around right now. So you will be receiving that fill in the coming days. Completed is I've added every single one of the notaries that have reached out and verified their tokens into the Slack channels, the private notary channel, as well as the regional. And I stood up a private Slack channel with each individual notary, myself, and Phil. I'll talk about that Slack as we go forward on the next slide. What's coming up next is that we're going to be asking you to make sure that the information in your GitHub application is verified and correct. And this is specifically your ledger address. So if you applied with a different ledger address than you're going to use that's now, making sure that the core information in the top of your application is updated and current is really important. So those of you that have reached out, thank you. Sounds like we've got everybody, but if anything should change or block, feel free to reach out and I'll help you as we go through it. Coming up next is the onboarding documentation. So I'm wrapping this up as we go forward tomorrow. And what these are is essentially, how do you use the registry? What do you look for in an application? How do you communicate in Slack? Where do you go for questions? Think about this as just like a getting started guide for an effective and appropriate notary in the program. So I'm going to be out of the office on Friday. So I would say realistically, that will be coming down the pipeline to you early next week. So you have that guidelines as you get onboarded. In that guide, we'll also talk about how to verify your ledger address. When you start to use the registry, we'll have you verify your address. That will put you on the multi-sig, and this will allow you to sign LDN applications. So all of that will be in the guide that you'll be receiving next week. If you have any questions in this process, feel free to use that private Slack that I've stood up with you. Or if it's just a general question, there is now a private notaries channel that you've been added to. That's a great place for, hey, I'm new and I'm getting started. The reason why I would recommend that you use that private notaries channel is because in case I'm out of the office or in a different time zone, a lot of the community may be able to answer questions that you would have to wait 12 to 16 hours for me to get to my computer. So that channel is really effective for you as you go on. Coming down the pipe, the reason why we're doing this sign-in sheet with Airtable is we're going to be rolling out the Notary leaderboard. So what this leaderboard will work is just the same kind of leader score that you would see in a video game, where what we're doing is we're collecting metrics from the program for notaries, like average time to data cap, the number of unique clients, issues, calls, and essentially we're aggregating that data to produce a score for each notary in the program. So you remember in the notary application, some of you that selected a higher SLA, you're essentially committing to like allocating data cap quickly, to coming to these calls, to making your voice heard on the proposal. So Phil has been working on this leaderboard. We're getting ready to launch it. And essentially what we're just doing is just giving you a heads up that this metrics will be coming and collected and be all set up for you. For the disclosure forms, all of you have submitted this. Anybody who hasn't submitted, I've reached out in a DM to let you know. And what happens next is we're working with our legal team to finalize the review, the sanction checks, and we use this to send you one fill. So whatever wallet address you signed up to have in the registry, we'll be receiving one fill in the coming days. Again, this is to cover the gas fee. No action is needed on your part, but you will see that one fill transfer in the coming days. If you have any questions on this, because it has to do with disclosures, I'd recommend that you just keep it in a DM and I'll be happy to get back to you. The registry is where you're going to go to actually see the open requests. And we're going to cover this a lot in the onboarding guide. And essentially this registry used to be the place where data cap was requested. Now it's the primary tool for notaries to sign in. And with this registry, you can actually see the open applications and then go click on these open applications. That will take you to the GitHub where you can review that applicant's information, ask any additional information yourself, and then come back and allocate that data cap. So we're going to cover this in a lot of detail during the onboarding. Just consider this just like an introduction to this as we go forward on. The last slide just for notary communications is communications. So Slack is probably the primary tool that we use in Fil Plus for all of our comms. GitHub is great, it's a good program of record, but it's really hard to have a conversation in a threaded environment. So these are the following channels that we recommend you are in. So right off the bat is Fil Plus. If you're on this call, you're probably already in that channel. There's around 2,100 members. It's meant for large scale announcements like, hey, I'd like to show you my new product, or hey, we're going to have a Fil Plus symposium in Lisbon coming up. It's broad audience, which means broad threads and topics. So if you have something that you wanted to share with the community, it's going to have a lot of eyes, and it's going to be more moderated as we go forward. I ask that if you are an applicant, we don't post applications. We have a separate channel for that, which I cover. And again, just mindful, this is a very broad room for broad topics. The next one is that application review. This isn't a required channel for you notaries. This is totally optional. But what we have in this channel is any data cap requests. People can flag that request and share information about it. The reason we stood this up is someone would make a data cap application. They wanted to share their project with the community, and then the Fil Plus channel became spammy. So there's around 600 members in this. This is a great place for notaries. If you see somebody posting in there, hey, check out my application, can you take a look? A lot of that back and forth happens in that Slack channel. Completely optional, but highly recommended. Report a scam. It's a broader channel through all of Filecoin. And this is a great place if you see something that you'd like to flag or discuss. This is a smaller channel. I think there's around 75 people. So that means the message won't have as much back and forth comms, but sometimes that's a good thing if you're looking to not have a full-fledged discussion with the whole community, but just kind of build that idea and get some eyes on. So this is separate from the working group, just a place with a few members if you wanted to report something and have some eyes on. The next channel is private. This is the Fil Plus Notaries channel. This is a great place if you say, have a question on how to use the registry, or you had a question about an application and you're not sure what to ask or what to do next. That channel is private. There's around 160, 170 of us in it right now. And this is a good place to tap on the existing network of fellow notaries. There's not a lot of activity, which means that if you post something, it will probably have a lot of eyes on it quickly. And again, this is really helpful if you have a broad how to do something question. You're going to get a quick response a lot quicker than messaging me, which might be in the middle of my night. We also stood up that same premise for each region. The idea of this is to give you a smaller cohort and a place that you could ask questions that are even smaller than the Notaries channel. There's around 20, 30 people average per region. So again, just a place for tactical questions, you may have it. And then lastly is the private threads. I highly recommend not DMing me directly. When a lot of DMs come through, sometimes they can get lost, but I have a filter set up for the private channels that I've created, which will bubble it up to the top. So if you message me in that private channel that I made for you, it'll be a lot more effective. And what's nice is that if I need to add somebody in, I can do so. So if you have a problem with allocating data cap, for example, I could plus Simon in, he could help with the problem, and then he could jump right back out. We can't do that with DMs, which is the reason why we made these channels. So before I go on, I'm going to do a quick pause and see if anybody has any questions on the Slack channels, on the registry that's coming down the pipe, the disclosure, or anything general as we get started together. Yeah, Joffrey.
Hi. All the notary signs is a post. So I just want to know when the notary allowed to restart the sign again.
I think I fully understand the question. Could you mind rewording it, or RJ, Simon, Galen, if you got that, feel free to jump in.
I heard that. I think you mentioned, that notary signing is paused at the moment, and when are we restarting notary signing? So as far as I'm aware right now, the main things that we're working on is just getting the new notaries on board, the new multi-sig, but current notaries should not actually be blocked as far as I'm aware. So you have data cap to give out and you're participating, you should be. RG, am I wrong?
We just paused, we paused
Eunice.
over the weekend just because of the investigation. But yeah, since this morning,
Should be good, right?
Governance call. I think all the notaries who are as part of the proposal, proposal 811 that I'll be talking about, you might have seen it in the Slack channels. Apart from those notaries, I think other notaries are good to go. Yes.
Yeah, so it should be unblocked unless you are specifically under review by the Trust and Transparency Working Group. Thanks, Art.
That's great.
Thanks. Good question. Thanks, Cheryl.
Thanks.
Great. If anything comes up, feel free to stick a hand up or post in chat. We'll circle back. So with that, I'm going to turn the call over. I can't see if Casey's on the phone. So Casey, quick call. Did you happen to join?
I think Casey's in a time zone that makes this midnight for him, so he's passing today.
Got it.
Yeah.
Then maybe what I'll do is, Deep, would it be okay with you if I spoke to these Slacks and then turned it over to you to speak for Casey?
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, love it. Old times. So if you're an SLA notary 2 or more, you've committed to join 2 working groups. Wildly helpful for the network as we grow. So just a quick reminder on those Slack channels so you have it as you start out the year. Phil Plus Enterprise Working Group, if you're keen to join, KZ's pinned all of the content for the program in the top of that Slack. Add that room. It's public, so you can join, follow, and see how to get connected. And the same thing with Plus Trust WG for Working Group. This is used to engage the community, have these discussions, and really look at how we're stabilizing this network as we grow. Both of these channels are public. Take a look if you haven't joined a working group already. Now is the time to almost start looking into that. So with that, KZ wrote a proposal. I'm going to pass it over to Deep to kind of speak to it. Thanks, Deep.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring your attention to proposal 807, which KZ posted, I think, earlier today or this week. It's basically a rehashing of the SLA expectations around the current pipeline that we call E-Fil Plus. For those of you that aren't familiar with E-Fil Plus, it's basically the attempt to support private and encrypted data via data cap and onboarding of that type of data onto Filecoin via data cap and verified deals. This proposal basically takes a look at some of the learnings that we had from the initial pilot phase of E-Fil Plus that ran through, November, December of last year. A lot of good learnings, especially around KYC, KYB, and regional nuances that needed to be introduced to ensure that all use cases could be supported. Plus sort of more details and more takeaways from the way in which, especially the way in which SPs are creating onboarding plans for the clients that they're bringing onto the network. So really, this is just like a more nuanced take and more introduction of better details and understanding now that we've been able to do a little bit of testing and get some learnings from it. So for all those of you that are interested, either because you're an SP in the ecosystem or because you're a notary that's interested in supporting the onboarding of private and encrypted data, take a look at the topic 807 and then join KZ on one of his upcoming calls or join him in the channel to share your thoughts. There's going to be a lot of work and progress, I think, on this front as the usage of Filecoin continues to grow drastically this year. And so would urge you to engage in this, especially if you're a notary or a storage provider.
Thanks, Steve. I'll pause for a brief moment if anybody has questions. All right, RG, I'm going to pass the line over to you for 811.
Thank you so much. So, hi everyone. Just wanted to start with some of housekeeping items. Bi-weekly calls for the Trust and Transparency Working Group will begin beginning next week. We had to just make sure to align the dates so that they're not conflicting with the governance calls. But we did host office hours today, and I know some of you might not have been able to make it. So if there's a strong desire in this group of people to, if you have topics to talk about, I'm more than happy to host them tomorrow as well. Just please, you can leave a +1 in comments right here, or you can just message me and we can also have one-on-one chats. So those are the first 2 items. The final, I think, and I guess what everyone's been talking about is, so there's been a lot of discussion over the past couple of weeks about data cap abuse. I think some community members have been more active than others. And so I think a couple of things there. So a lot of these issues that were raised weren't new to me as the trust and transparency lead or the governance team. I think what was interesting is to understand the urgency of some of these things. I think the very reason that my job exists and the Trust and Transparency Working Group exists is because we are aware that a resource like data cap has the potential for abuse. And so, which is why we are building systems and tools and programs to make sure that we are able to tackle this. Now, there have been a lot of claims that have been made to the extent of the abuse. We are still investigating those. Nothing is, black and white. As everyone knows, this is Web3, and so there's a lot of things. Even though we want, truth, I think it's not always possible to understand the behavior completely because you have off-chain behavior and on-chain behavior, and so a lot of the things that have been highlighted are on-chain behaviors, but we can't make very objective deductions from that. So all of that is to say that we are taking some steps. So on a programmatic level, we are looking at reprioritizing some of our kind of roadmap. So my goal is to publish a public roadmap on what are some of the things that we'll be launching in Q1 and from a trust and transparency perspective. And then I think our approach so far has been that we wanted to create the tools to identify fraud and then kind of come up with very strong, or I should say very objective ways on what the consequences would be. But it seems like what the community wants right now is they want the consequences to be discussed in parallel as we're building these tools. And so you might have seen the CID checker bot come out. And so I think a big question right now is, okay, if CID checker bots flag something, what is the consequence? And so I think that is a good flag to be raised, and we are working on it. One of the things that we're doing right now is, one of the other things that happened is we went into a full-fledged investigation of the last 300 LDNs that were signed since December 2nd, because close to 190 PIBs of data was used up from the main multisig. And so, which is a bit unusual, not to say that it's fraud, could be, the program has grown more than 5,500% over the last year. So it could be that it's used up in the right way, but it was unusual for us. So we went to doing some investigation. We did find some behaviors from notaries who weren't asking the right questions. And so this wasn't a list that was created by me. This was a group effort by different community members, by fraud analysts who we hire on grants. And so over the weekend and over the last couple of days, that's why we paused signing. And we have come up with a list of notaries. What you see on screen right now is not the entire list. I think there's been 2 more notaries added to this. And so, but all of that is to say that this is not a conclusion. This is a proposal, and there's issues that have been shared in on issue 811. We've also shared further evidence. The notaries have come and rebutted and provided evidence why they think that this is a false accusation. And at the end of the day, we don't want this to be a very top-down decision-making, like you are conducting fraud or you're abusing data cap. I think if they have good reasoning, I think the community, and I think they deserve a chance, and the community deserves an answer. So that's the approach we're taking. This is definitely going to be a first if this goes through in the program. And I think, but I definitely think that I think the goal is here is to send a strong signal that I think we will not be tolerating abuse anymore. And I mean, that was always our goal, but now that we actually have tools and systems that we can actually rely on, I think we'll be actually putting them to action. And you'll be seeing proposals like this if we can continue to see accusations of data cap abuse. So that's what I wanted to talk about. And then please go look at issue 811 if you are interested. And provide your input. I think even if you are not related to this issue at all, I think it's always good. If you have an opinion or a comment that you're not comfortable sharing in public, please DM me. My DMs are always open. But yeah, that's what I wanted to say. And we can move towards a community discussion.
RG, when you say that it's not surprising to you, like I understand that there's always going to be some potential of fraud, right?
Yeah.
But when you say it's not surprising to you, what's surprising is the urgency. Can you just explain that more? Because I just had a look at, I just went through like the top miners on Firefox, and basically you've got like out of the top 20, you've got 15 that only do CC, and then you've got 5 miners that are not doing CC, and all of those ones got called out a part of this issue. So like that's, for me, that was kind of really surprising. So can you just explain that a little bit more?
Sure. I mean, I think what I was referring to is the fact that, I think we are aware that, I've had one-off conversations with different SPs who have like admitted to me that they've bought data cap off the market. I've had one-off conversations with different clients who have admitted that they've done the same. I've had one of, this was back during Phil Lisbon, when we had a similar case, and we I think signing was paused as well. I got a bunch of DMs, people telling me that, hey, like there are some SPs and notaries who are colluding. And so all these things surfaced, which is, what I was referring to. I think, and on the urgency side, I think, so our goal right now is to, as I mentioned, to develop the tools and the platform. So we have Fil Plus Watch that was launched V1 in December. We have CID Checkerbot. We have, of course, the Notary leaderboard, which will create accountability to notaries. But the urgency part is that I think we wanted to roll this out and then share it with the community. But I think what we're hearing right now is that is not enough. We need to implement consequences. And so I think that's why I was referring to the urgency aspect. I mean, I think you raise a good, interesting point that I was looking at it from that perspective that, on the 5 miners that have been pointed out in this issue. I think we want to focus on notaries, because I think that's like the first touch point for the Filecoin Plus program. I think reprimanding notaries and what can we do, reprimanding SPs and how can we work around with, slashing QAPs and whatnot. I think it's a broader conversation that requires, I think, people beyond Filecoin Plus as well. And I think it goes a bit beyond the scope of governance. So but I think what I mentioned in this issue is literally the content that I got from the different community members, and it was a summary of that. It wasn't saying that those miners are actually fraudulent, but I think we had a lot of concrete evidence to show that there was some sort of collusion and CID sharing and VPN usage going on. And I think what we're doing right now is proposing that, because some of these notaries were the ones that were responsible for giving out data cap, I think that's our first touch point. And then if we eventually find that the SPs were also at fault or are continuing to be at fault, then of course we'll also take action on that front.
It's a funny one. The reward is it's a big reward, right? There's a big incentive there. Anyway, thanks for that. Appreciate it.
So I have one. Yeah, I have one question. Why do you think these notaries or this behavior is happening? What do you see behind it? Is it is it the intention of those notaries to do that, or is it maybe a miscommunication, lack of proper guides? What do you think is behind that?
I mean, again, I'm no one to, I don't think anyone can read anyone's mind, so I don't know what their intention is, but I think what we're saying here is that comparing their data, their due diligence plan, looking at their application, looking at their behavior for not just one or two applications, but a bunch of applications, we continue to see a pattern where they sign data cap without doing a thorough due diligence, or when the CID checker bot raised a flag, but then they ignored it. And so I think those are some things I'm trying. When I was putting this together, I tried to be as objective as possible. Again, at the end of the day, if you disagree, or if you think that this does not represent an accurate picture, please point it out. Please call me out in public. And yeah, but again, I think I personally like to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. I'd like to believe that they didn't have a bad intention, but at the end of the day, I think if you sign up to be a notary, and I think some of them, if not all, have been around for a while. Some of these notaries, it's not that this is the first time they're in the fourth round. And so, yeah, I think that's, we're taking like a holistic picture, at least trying to take a holistic view on things. So that's what I would like to say.
And did they get like communicated of what's happening, and did you get any input on that? And a follow up on that. Are we following like any standard process to the resolution? So I don't.
So this is the first time we are like proposing this, right? So this is like, I think this is a process that we're proposing to potentially remove notaries. I think at least I've personally found, and I don't know if Iron Kere and Phil get a lot of communication. I don't think it's very productive to have a conversation in DMs with these notaries, saying them one-on-one. I think we're way past that stage at this point. So I think, to me, this is what the resolution process looks like, where you open it and bring it bring the notaries to a forum, and it's not just me or the governance team asking them one-on-one questions and like doing an investigation isolation. It's everyone, and I think that's kind of what we have seen over the last 2 weeks. And in my opinion, I think the kind of stuff that has come out when everyone collaborates is way better than like me sitting in front of my computer for 6 hours.
All right.
Nice. Well, RG, thanks for that rundown. In the interest of time, everyone, we're going to have plenty of time for just broader discussions on this and other things that come up. So I'll pause one more time if anybody has questions specific to this proposal before we go on to a broader led conversation led by Galen.
One thing I just wanted to add, I think I'll post it on the issue itself. I think the notaries who are part of this proposal, they requested to extend the consensus deadline because it's the Chinese New Year, and I think that's a very fair ask. So we will be delaying it by a week for them to, provide their rebuttal or their evidence. So yeah, I think so. Instead of Jan 20th, it'll be Jan 27th. But again, if you think that you need more time, then please propose that, and then we'll take that into account as well.
Yeah, one last thing I would like to mention about this is I see that there's a piece there that you wrote about conducting the diligence and whatnot. I don't know if that's already documented somewhere as a standard process, but if the objective is to see if anyone is following this process, maybe it's a good thing to actually have like some checklists or anything that would be more standard, like
yeah.
So we could
so I think we have a README for the CID checker bot, and I think the due diligence thing I was referring to is actually mentioned in their notary applications. So they actually come up with a plan of how they will conduct due diligence, and so that's what I was referring to. I think I'm a bit hesitant to provide a standard plan, partly because when it comes to trust and fraud, at least the way I think of it is that we need to introduce some level of randomness. And so if you tell everyone to do the same thing, I think it's easy for the person trying to game the system to then game the system, because I always work, and I think I always work with the assumption that, they're way smarter than me and way smarter than us. So I think that's why we're a bit hesitant, but I think we will be doing notary training and some of those things coming up. So yeah.
Okay, thanks.
All right, good questions. Galen, if you're on the line, can I turn it over to you to spearhead the last 20 minutes of discussions? Galen, are you on the line?
I know that he was going back and forth between being available because of the time zone he's in. Kiri, I'm happy to help facilitate if there's any specific topics and things that we'd like to see covered with the audience that are available right now.
Always appreciate that, dude. Always appreciate it. All right, this is open forum. Sorry.
Yeah, it's been a heavy week. Lots of interesting topics. Notary elections closing out. Trust and transparency advancements, a lot of work underway, and of course, start of the new year in the West and about to be start of the new year in parts of the East as well. And so it's definitely an exciting time.
Oh, I should also mention, if you disagree with me and you think, I'm doing something wrong, you can always go to Deep or other people in the governance team. That's why this is a decentralized network. So
that's fair enough. Here, there's no open topics. I'm also happy to give people time back.
I'll happily bring up something that I think this issue is kind of just reiterating a little bit is, part this issue or this incentive, I think, because the incentive is so high with the Filecoin Plus program, when things like CC sector becomes unprofitable, everyone's going to look for, how do I get as much data cap as possible? And so these things are always going to pop up. I think part this comes from, we don't have, I think in the network, it feels like we don't have enough real clients willing to pay for data. And it's kind of like a binary outcome here. It's either you get into the Filecoin Plus program and you're profitable, or you don't and you're not profitable, because people aren't willing to pay probably for the level of service. So I think I may have brought up this a couple of sessions back, but are there any working groups looking at how the Filecoin Plus program can change, in the sense of maybe having different tiers, so it's not 10x or 0x?
Yeah, great question, Mark. I think there's been an idea around that point that's floated around quite a bit. I myself am a proponent of some of that thinking as well. I'd say the right place to take that up is the enterprise working group, because I think that's where you start to stratify and differentiate commercially viable data sets stored with extreme subsidies versus non-commercially viable data sets stored with extreme subsidies. And so I think given that that is probably the stratifying and defining difference across things that are not network subsidized in a way that tremendously impacts ROI functions, I would say start there, have that conversation, kick it off with KZ. RG and I in the past have also touted with the idea of putting a FIP out there that multiplies open data sets by another QAP number, like twice as much as closed data sets. And we have some sort of oracle that tests for retrievability, et cetera. And there's a bunch of things that we can do with smart contracts at an L2 level if we can start to verify usefulness and verify like post extraction value of a data set. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely opportunity for something like that. Enterprise Fil Plus is probably the first place to have that conversation. So let's bring it up there. There's also the enterprise working group overall in Filecoin, which is, you know, even a superset of some of the enterprise relevant things for just Filecoin Plus. You know, and bringing some of the folks in from that community might be interesting as well. And so I'd say start in Slack, start in the working group channel. Happy to back you up specifically on that topic as well, personally.
Yeah, and Jake, another one is like something that I've realized more and more is that some of these data sets that are being grabbed for Filecoin Plus meet the rules, but I don't know if it's like in principle maybe is the right thing. Like just having open data sets and someone curating that data set and chucking it in the Filecoin Plus program, again, versus a client that actually is doing maybe scientific research or doing something and is applying, like they're quite different.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
And for a notary, that's kind of hard in my mind. It's like, okay, well, you're actually doing what Filecoin Plus is suited for, but as notaries, is that what we want?
That makes sense. So I think there's like a Fil Plus mandate, right? The way it was set at the network level, at the like the Filecoin governance level, was quite broad, which is really how do we make the most of the network that we have today, right? We're a network with a tremendous amount of storage supply that we could do a lot of things with. And so it comes down to like the perceived usefulness of the opportunity cost or the opportunity cost of the data that's being stored. And so when we're like demand constrained, which I would claim is the environment right now, I think people get the ability to get a lot looser with the definition of usefulness because the opportunity cost itself is not perceived to be as high. As these things start to change and more real demand is served, I think the perceived opportunity cost increases and the likelihood that people are super flexible with the storage of these things decreases. There's also like the ability for us to build future business once you have access to certain types of data sets in a decentralized network and the PR that comes from doing that, which are also hard to measure values, but also like distinct ways in which you could prove the usefulness of the network beyond just, you know, is somebody building a business on this today versus tomorrow versus someday in the future. And so that is why the notaries are humans, right? That's why we need that sort of nuance to be able to say, hey, is this of value? Is this worth the opportunity cost of space it's going to take up? And the fact that, you know, every piece of data cap that's dealt in a verified deal ends up diluting every next piece of data cap used in a verified deal. And so is it worth it? And I think as a notary, one of the things that we don't see that much of is dissent right now, right? Like a lot of notaries either support or stay quiet. And I think one thing that this like trust and transparency type conversation, the leaderboard type conversations, the implied reputation of notaries, if I can call it that, it will start to create more discussions. And it's not about being right or being wrong. It's about moving the community in a healthy direction, even if you don't always agree. And so I'm looking forward to more discourse this year.
So, yeah. Okay.
Looks like a bunch of people got haircuts in time for this call. See, RG had one. Alessandro, you definitely did something. Kiri, what's going on there? James is due for one, it looks like.
Just one more, I think, point on Mark's thing. I think, Mark, we are also thinking about ways of making, like, I think one of the concerns that was raised is making top of the funnel abuse, kind of tackling that. And so I think we've gone back and forth about making it like for getting like ledger verification to apply for data cap, right? Or doing some sort of KYC through an external vendor. I think so far, there was like a lot of sentiment that was against it because they were like, well, you know, we're trying to bring these clients who don't even know about Web2 or like, they're like, sometimes they're not even on the cloud. And how can you expect them to do a ledger verification? I think what I've heard over the last couple of weeks, more and more, is that we do need to implement kind of verification at the very start layer, so that not anyone and everyone can apply. And so that would mean things like, so one of the reasons why we did the E-Fil Plus pilot is we are testing out different vendors. So one of the ideas right now and potentials is, let's say the vendor that KZ has scouted, Synapse.io, we can potentially integrate that as an API on Filecoin.storage, which we just launched last month, and then have the client pay. So I think from what I remember, the cost is around 100 USD. And so depending on if the SP is applying on the behalf of the client or if the client is applying, they will pay. I think to your point, I totally agree. I think when Fil Plus is marketed as a program that is about free storage, it does more harm than it does good. I think there was a big discussion on this at ESPA this time as well. We had speakers talk about, well, how can SPs charge for storage? Why should SPs charge for storage? I think the narrative is definitely shifting, and we want to shift for a bunch of different reasons that I think many people are aware of here. So, but it will take time. And so as we're working towards that, I think just know that we are working towards that, and we also want it to be in that direction. It's just, takes some time, because it's kind of like, if you've gotten someone used to something that is so good, it just takes a little bit of time to take it away from them. And we want to do it, we don't want to snatch it away. We want to do it in a way that is aligned with the program's guidelines and principles.
Yeah. No doubt, it's a hard problem to solve. I think, from my perspective, it's just, again, like if you go back to what I was saying before, look at the top miners, the value that the top miners are bringing into, and I'm not saying maybe those 5 miners that have been called out for fraud, maybe that isn't true, right? But my thinking was, if it is true, then you've got like the top 20 miners not adding a huge amount of value to this network. So we need to work out ways to kind of prioritize that and devalue those things that maybe aren't adding as much value. And again, it's a hard problem to solve.
I mean, if anything, I think, again, depends everyone on anyone's bandwidth. If SPs in this room, if like people like you, Mark, if you guys are interested in contributing, I don't know, 4 to 5 hours or a month to be part of this group, we're more than happy to kind of float that. I think when it comes from an SP, I think it's way more powerful than coming from us as a governance team or a client. Because I mean, if an SP is saying that we need this, that's like a good enough signal to the network that we need to prioritize this. I think so. Yeah, that is definitely an option. So if you think that is something you'd like to get involved with, let's have a chat and try to push it forward.
All right, so easy.
So I have a couple of comments about those things. So one of the points I have is that I think a lot of the work is probably best coming from the governance team and the Filecoin Foundation, Protocol Labs, and whoever else is running the governance and running things. I believe a lot of the stuff that is happening is because parts of it because of miscommunication and lack of proper standards, guidelines, and documentation on how to do things and how to operate things inside the program. So be it a notary, a storage provider, or a client, they may be lost on whatever they're doing, and then there's a lack of confidence in the program. Another thing that one suggestion I have for the program is to actually think of Filecoin Plus as an organization or some sort of agency or something like that operates within the Filecoin network, and then think of notaries as some agents that get clients and whatnot. And in the future, what is probably best is to turn Filecoin Plus into just another entity that is operating as a name agency for data within the network. And then that solves a lot of the confidence problems, a lot of the trust problems that we are having, and that also plays into the incentives. So having Filecoin Plus be just another organization that is open to other organizations is more likely to have best like incentive and mechanisms to do all the processes that we are trying to do with a couple of members from the governance team. That's overwhelming for the governance team, that's overwhelming for notaries and whoever is trying to help within the community, because it's just a lot of stuff. And yeah, so I guess those are some ideas and suggestions I have been thinking about for a lot of time, and I think we'll probably solve a lot of the issues we're having. And one other comment about like having tools from the enterprise working group and using that on the website. I don't think that solves the problem, because then notaries, clients, and storage providers can start to question about the tool. So is that the right tool? Is that the what is the right tool to use and whatnot? So I guess that doesn't actually solve the problem. I see that more as like testing a new business case for actually running the Filecoin Plus program as like an enterprise and an agency. So yeah, those are some of my thoughts.
Thanks, Alex. If you would like to concretize these a little bit and kick off some discussions, that would be awesome. I think some of the stuff you're saying makes a lot of sense to me, and some of the stuff that you're saying I don't agree with at all. But instead of talking through it right now, better to capture these things in writing. And so if you're up for it, let's take it to GitHub discussions. Thank you. All right, Kira, I think we wrap up.
Love that idea. So I posted the link to this Airtable one last time for those of you that are on the call. Thank you again for coming. And you notaries, stand by. You'll receive your E-Fil and your guidelines for accessing the registry and start the kickoff and allocating data cap next week. If you have any questions, feel free to DM me in our private channels or ask in the private notary channel. From there on out, have a great morning, day. Thanks for coming to the second Notary Governance call.
Thanks, everyone.